Hi everyone. Welcome to Mr. Darkness. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Because I'm truly curious how far stories like these can travel, and I deeply appreciate it. If you've been here before, I'm glad to see you again. Now then, let's begin. My name is Sam Carter, 35 years old. And until last winter, I had not lived alone since my 20s. The cabin I rented on the western edge of the Smokies was supposed to feel peaceful, a place to breathe after the divorce. Instead, the silence felt swollen, thick enough that it pressed against my ribs each night. The pine boards creaked under my footsteps, the windows rattled in the wind, and every sound echoed like the house was reminding me there was no one else here. I tried filling the place with small tasks. I chopped wood every morning. I hiked the same half-mile trail that looped behind the cabin. At night I cooked the simplest meals just to smell something warm. Still, the loneliness clung to me like the damp that rose from the forest floor. Even Christmas offered no comfort. I bought a cheap artificial tree and left it in the box near the stairs, too aware of how strange it felt to decorate it alone. On Christmas Eve, something inside me cracked. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the bitter cold pushing through the chinks in the walls. I opened a dating app for the first time in months, scrolling aimlessly. That was when I saw Rowan. Her profile was almost empty. One blurry photo, pale lighting, a half smile. The biography said nothing meaningful, yet she messaged instantly. Her words arrived fast, as if she had been waiting for someone, anyone. After a few lines of small talk, she sent something unexpected. "Why not let me come over tonight? We could decorate your Christmas tree together. I can bring lights, you bring wine." I should have questioned it. A stranger, a remote cabin, Christmas Eve. But loneliness can create an urgency that feels like gravity. I agreed. I cleaned the place for nearly an hour, wiping counters as if she cared, checking the mirror, though I barely recognized myself these days. At 9:15, there was a heavy knock on the door. When I opened it, Rowan stood there, taller than I expected. At least 178. She wore a thick coat and a knit cap pulled low, making it hard to see her face clearly. A smell drifted in as she stepped across the threshold. Not perfume, but something stale, like damp clothes and old cigarettes mixed with a faint sweetness. It made my stomach tighten in a way I ignored. She hugged me immediately, too tightly. Her body trembled against mine, though her voice was cheerful when she said hello. I tried to laugh it off and offered her a seat on the sofa. Her eyes skittered around the room with a focus that felt calculated. She noticed the loft stairs, the small bathroom door, the windows. I poured wine to break the tension. She grabbed the glass with shaking fingers and drank half of it before I sat down. "Are you all right?" I asked. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. We went to retrieve the tree from the loft. When I reached for the box, she took it from me effortlessly. Her strength surprised me. Her hands looked rougher than her photo had implied, her grip uncomfortably firm. She carried the entire thing down the narrow steps without complaint. We assembled the tree in silence. The cheap branches crackled as we spread them apart. She moved quickly, almost too eagerly. I went to the storage nook beneath the floor to grab the box of ornaments. As I lifted the lid, I felt a wave of dizziness. It rolled through me like heat shimmer. I told myself it was just the wine, even though I had barely tasted it. When I returned, Rowan was standing close to the tree. I noticed she was pouring something into my glass. Her hand trembled so violently the wine rippled. I forced a laugh and took the glass from her. The room spun again as soon as the liquid touched my tongue. My legs weakened. My arms felt filled with sand. I tried to take a step, but the cabin tilted sideways. Words died in my throat. I collapsed onto the sofa as though someone had cut the strings that held my body upright. I could not move, could not speak, could barely breathe. At some point, the lights flickered out. I woke, or thought I woke, to a darkness that seemed deeper than night. My eyes were open, but nothing else responded. It felt like lying inside a body made of stone. Then I heard her. Soft scraping. Objects shifting. Something glass breaking on the floor. Rowan whispered to herself in a low, hurried rhythm. I could not make out the words. The tone alone chilled me. Her shadow grew before she stepped into the narrow glow from the dying coals in the stove. Her face looked twisted, her eyes too wide, darting around as if searching the room for a hidden threat. When she looked at me, it was not recognition. It was suspicion. "What are you hiding?" she asked. Her voice rasped. Her breath smelled sharp and metallic. She pulled a utility knife from her coat. The blade caught the dim light. She climbed onto my chest. Her weight crushed the air from my lungs. She pressed the cold edge to my throat. "Tell me where it is," she screamed. Spit flecked my face. She forced her fingers into my mouth, prying at my jaw, as if she believed I was concealing something inside. I could not fight her. I could not even blink. In that moment, I was certain this was how I would die, paralyzed under a stranger's hands, in a lonely cabin. On Christmas Eve, then a car horn sounded from the road outside. Rowan froze. Her eyes snapped toward the window. Panic twisted her features. She scrambled off me, gathered whatever objects she had dropped, and fled out the door without closing it behind her. Cold air washed into the room. I lay there unable to move, staring at the open doorway and the dark tree lights flickering weakly beside me. When the officers left, the cabin fell into a silence that felt heavier than before. I wrapped a blanket over my shoulders and sat on the floor where the fallen glass shards still glimmered like frost. My muscles ached from the paralysis, but at least they obeyed me again. Every breath felt too loud in the emptied room. I kept replaying the shape of Rowan's face hovering above me, and each time the memory tightened something in my chest. By morning, I forced myself to take stock of the cabin. I needed to know if she had stolen anything beyond the missing medication. The doorframe was scratched. One drawer was pulled halfway out. A few decorations lay on the ground near the tree, but nothing else seemed disturbed. It left me with a strange question that followed me from room to room. If she had not come for the ornaments or electronics or money, then what exactly had she been hunting for? For the rest of that day, I tried to restore some normalcy. I drank water until the dizziness faded. I swept the entire floor. I turned on music, low and steady. In the afternoon, I called a friend in Asheville, telling him a softened version of what had happened. He offered to let me stay with him. I told him I would pack up in the morning. Saying it out loud brought a faint relief. I convinced myself the nightmare had ended the moment Rowan ran into the night. That was the false calm. I did not yet know it. By sunset, the sky turned amber behind the ridge. The wind made the porch boards creak in a slow, rhythmic pattern. I tried to distract myself by fixing the loose latch on the cabin's back window. When I opened it a few inches, cold air drifted in, along with the smell of something unfamiliar. I paused. It reminded me faintly of the scent that had clung to Rowan's coat when she first arrived. A damp sweetness mixed with cigarette smoke. I scanned the tree line but saw nothing. I told myself the smell was only memory. Later that night, I lay on the sofa, the blanket pulled to my chin. The cabin felt too quiet again, but in a different way than before. The silence now carried an alertness, as if the woods were paying attention. Around midnight, I heard a distant crunch outside. A single footstep. Then nothing. I held my breath until my lungs burned. When no sound followed, I told myself it was probably a deer crossing near the firewood pile. Sleep came shallow and restless. Sometime after 2 in the morning, a click echoed from the front door. I jolted upright. My heart clattered in my chest. I reached instinctively for the phone and held it against my leg so the screen light would not give me away. Another sound followed. A slow, careful push. The door eased open. I could not see the figure at first, only the outline. Tall, broader in the shoulders than I remembered. The person stepped inside with deliberate slowness, pausing to listen. When the figure moved closer, the dying glow in the stove revealed the winter coat, the knit cap, the boots still caked with wet soil. Rowan's voice followed. Or what I thought was Rowan's voice. It sounded deeper this time, almost strained, as if someone was forcing it higher and failing. I froze. Something inside my mind clicked into place. The way a puzzle piece reveals what the picture truly is. The height, the strength she had shown when she lifted the tree box with one hand, the roughness of the hands that did not match the photo, the trembling, the strange intensity. The face under the knit cap had been in shadow almost the entire night. Even the voice had been oddly flat. The person turned, letting the coat slip open. Inside, the shape of the body was unmistakably different. Not the slight, a square outline of a woman's chest, but a flat form and a wider frame. My stomach tightened. The truth arrived all at once. Rowan had never been a woman at all. He walked toward the tree, whispering something through clenched teeth. I could not catch the words. His hand brushed the branches as if searching for something hidden there. Then he turned slowly toward me. I tried not to move, hoping he would think I was asleep. He whispered again. The same question he had screamed when kneeling on my chest the night before. Where is it? I felt as if the room shrank around me. My hands trembled against the blanket, the phone still clutched in my palm. I realized with a sickening drop of dread that he had not run away that night. He had only retreated. He had circled back to the woods. He had been waiting for the lights to go out again. He stepped closer. I saw his face clearly now. The features were sharp under the dim glow. Not feminine at all. Not even close. Makeup smeared across the cheeks in uneven streaks. A wig tucked under the knit cap. Eyes wide, darting, frantic. He reached into his coat and pulled out the same utility knife. For a moment, I could not breathe. I forced myself to move in the smallest way possible. My thumb slid across the phone screen. I dialed without looking. The phone glowed softly under the blanket. The operator's voice crackled faintly, asking if I needed assistance. I prayed the whisper would not carry. Rowan stepped closer. I swallowed hard, then knocked a metal cup from the coffee table. It clattered across the wood floor. His eyes snapped toward the sound and he lunged, grabbing the blanket and ripping it away from me. But the world filled with noise at that exact moment. A police radio echoed outside. A door slammed. Flashlights swept across the windows. The call I had whispered had been enough. He spun toward the back of the cabin. His feet pounded across the floor. By the time the officers burst inside, he had vanished through the rear window, leaving only the curtains swaying and the cold air swirling behind him. They searched the woods until dawn. They found boot prints but no trail. They asked if I was sure about the person's identity, and I realized I could not even describe the true face. Only the mask. Only the voice he had tried to imitate. The next morning, I packed everything I owned into the truck. The tree lights were still glowing faintly when I unplugged them. The branches rustled as I brushed past, as if the tree itself wanted to keep the memory alive. When I drove away from the cabin, I checked the mirror again and again, half expecting to see a tall figure stepping from the woods. Even now, months later, I still smell that damp sweetness whenever a cold wind blows through open doors. I keep remembering the question he whispered into the dark. Where is it? I still do not know what he meant. I only know he believed I had something, and that he had not come for company or comfort. He had come searching, and somewhere out there, he might still be looking. Do you remember what it felt like in college? When you tried to convince yourself you were an adult, but deep down you knew you were still just a broke kid pretending to hold it all together. That was me, 3 years ago. I was in my third year at Midvale University, renting an old off-campus house with 2 friends, Eric and Josh. They flew home early for the holidays, so I was alone for the entire week before Christmas. I decided to stay behind until the 24th to pick up a few extra shifts at the warehouse where I worked part-time. I figured I'd earn a bit more cash, drive home that night, and show up like someone who was finally pulling his weight. But being alone in that big, drafty rental got dark fast. To cheer myself up, I bought a real Christmas tree, a beast of a Douglas fir, almost 8 feet tall, with a bald patch on the back that made it cheap. I dragged it into the living room, feeling weirdly proud, until I realized the problem. I didn't have a tree stand. The plastic one in the basement had cracked, and this tree was heavy. If I let go, it would crash straight through the window. Amazon couldn't deliver in time. Home Hardware had a decent metal stand, but it was $60. I had $40 left in my account to last 3 days. So I did what any broke college student would do. I checked Craigslist. It was December 23rd. The listings were mostly junk, but then I saw it. The title read, Cast Iron Christmas Tree Stand. Old School Strong. $15. The picture showed a green base with red bolts, the kind of thing that could anchor a telephone pole. Perfect. I sent a message right away. Still available. I can come tonight. 2 minutes later, the reply came. Still have it. Come now. This is the address. I'm up. I mapped it. It was in a residential neighborhood called Cedar Grove, about 25 minutes away, near the edge of town. A quiet area, mostly families and retirees. It felt safe. On my way, I replied. I climbed into my ancient Honda Civic. The cold that night was unreal, the kind of cold that stings your face. Snow from the earlier storm had crusted into sharp layers on the ground. As I turned onto the streets of Cedar Grove, the silence felt unnatural. Most of the houses were lit up in full holiday glory. Inflatable Santas, shimmering reindeer, blinking icicle lights. But the closer I got to the pin on my GPS, the darker it became. The seller's house was the only one with no decorations. No lights. Not even a wreath. The street lamp in front of the driveway flickered weakly. The house itself was beige, split level, totally dark except for a faint yellow glow in a back window. I parked on the curb. I remember sitting still for a few seconds, something heavy settling in my gut. Not exactly fear, but that deep animal feeling that something is off. But I told myself to stop being dramatic. It was just a tree stand. $15. I needed it. I walked up the icy path. The snow hadn't been shoveled. It was packed down in a way that suggested a lot of foot traffic, but no effort to clear it. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I stood there shivering in my thin jacket. Rang again. Finally, the inner door creaked open. Through the glass storm door, I saw him, a man, maybe in his 60s, heavyset, wearing a dingy gray sweater. He had thick glasses that made his eyes look too big. He didn't smile, just unlocked the outer door and opened it an inch. "You here for the stand?" he asked, voice hoarse, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in days. "Yeah," I said, reaching into my pocket. "Got 15 right here." He didn't take the money, just stared at me, then glanced at my car, then back at me. "It's down in the basement," he said. "Too heavy for my back. You'll have to come down and get it." Now, I'm not a big guy, 5'9" on a good day. He was older, but solid, broad-shouldered, and the way he said it wasn't a request. It was a command. Is anyone else home? I don't want to track snow inside. My wife's sleeping," he said. He was lying. I knew he was lying. That house was dead quiet. The air leaking from the door smelled like mold and cold cigarettes. "Just take off your shoes. Come in. I want to make sure it fits your tree. There's a trunk piece downstairs you can test it with." "I'm good," I said, heart pounding. "If it doesn't fit, it's only 15. Just show me where the stairs are." "No," he snapped, suddenly angry. "You have to see it. Come in." He opened the door wider, stepping into the dark hallway and motioned me in. "I'm in a rush," I said, my voice shaking a little. "Tell you what, I'll give you 20. No change. Just bring it out here." He stared at me for 5 full seconds. Something behind his eyes twitched. "Wet?" unstable, calculating. Finally, he grunted, turned, and disappeared into the shadows. I heard his heavy footsteps creak down the wooden stairs. I stayed on the porch, hand gripping the door handle so it wouldn't close behind me, ready to run. A minute later, he came back, wheezing, dragging the cast iron stand across the floor. He dropped it in the entryway. It clanged like a gong. "Here," he said. I slid the 20 through the crack. He snatched it. "No, thank you. No, Merry Christmas." Just another long, wet stare. I lifted the stand. It was heavier than I expected, nearly 20 pounds. As I turned away, he spoke. "Nice car," he said. I glanced at my rust-covered Civic. Thanks. You live in the dorms." "No," I said without thinking, then realized the mistake. "I mean, yeah, dorms. On the other side of town." He didn't blink. "Drive safe," he said. I almost sprinted to the car. Back home. The adrenaline wore off and I felt stupid. Just an old man. Just a weird vibe. My imagination. I brought the stand inside, locked the front door, and tried fitting it to the tree. It looked ancient, paint flaking off the green surface. As I fiddled with the red bolts, I heard something inside, a faint rattling, like a loose screw inside one of the legs. I shook it. The sound stayed. Maybe a piece of metal broke off during storage. I flipped the stand over. No holes. But one of the legs had black electrical tape wrapped around the bottom. Brand new. Frowning, I peeled it off. Inside the hollow leg, wedged tightly, was a small black square. Not metal. A device. I pried it out with a screwdriver. It dropped into my palm. A GPS tracker. Tile Pro. Its tiny light was blinking. My blood ran cold. I stood there, in the living room, holding it. There's no reason to put a GPS tracker in a Christmas tree stand. You don't take them out for walks. You don't lose them. There's only one reason to hide a tracker in something you sell to a stranger. To find out where they live. I panicked. I didn't know what else to do. My first instinct was to destroy it. I stomped on it with my heel until it cracked, and the battery popped out. I gathered the pieces, ran to the bathroom, and flushed them. Then I sat on the edge of the tub, breathing hard. He knew where I lived. But then my brain tried to reason with me. Maybe he put it in there for something else and forgot. Maybe he tracked his own inventory. I told myself anything that wasn't the obvious answer. I checked every lock in the house. Every window. I slid a chair under the front doorknob. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat. Netflix on, flinching at every creak in the walls. Christmas morning, sunlight finally came. The house felt safer in daylight. I finished setting up the tree, even though the stand made my skin crawl. At 10 in the morning, I went to make coffee. The kitchen window faced the backyard, which was fenced in. As I turned toward the sink, I dropped the cup in my hand. It shattered on the floor. Coffee splashed everywhere. The snow in the backyard was untouched. Smooth. Except for one thing. A single trail of heavy boot prints had come over the back fence. They led straight to the kitchen window. Stopped there. Someone had stood right there, looking in. Then the prints went along the side of the house, toward the street. No return trail. I called the police. 2 officers came. I showed them the stand, or what used to hold the tracker. I told them about the man on Craigslist. Showed them the footprints. They were polite, but they shrugged. "We can file a trespass report, but with no name or license plate. There's not much we can do." "He used a burner phone," I said, "but he put a GPS tracker on something he sold me." "That's not random. The tracker you flushed down the toilet," one officer reminded me. "We've got no proof. Just keep your doors locked. Call us if you see him again." They left. I felt helpless. I wasn't going to wait around. I drove to Best Buy and spent the last of my money and some credit to buy a security system. 3 wise cameras, one for the front door, one for the back, one in the living room, facing the tree and hallway. I connected them to my phone. I felt a little better. If he came back, I'd have proof. Christmas passed. Nothing happened. I went to work, came home, checked my phone obsessively. The Craigslist listing vanished. The number disconnected. He disappeared. By the 28th, I started to relax. Maybe those prints were just a neighbor cutting across my yard. Maybe it was all coincidence. That night, my friend Dave called. "Dude, you've been holed up all week. Come out. Kevin's. Burgers and soda. My treat." I hesitated. I didn't want to leave the house. But I also felt like I was losing my mind. "All right," I said, but not too late. I left at 8, double-locked the door, checked the cameras on my phone. All good. We hung out, laughed. For a few hours, I felt normal again. I forgot the old man, the tracker. I pulled into the driveway at 11:50 and froze. The front door was wide open, not just unlocked, kicked in. The frame splintered, the door swinging gently in the wind. I didn't go inside. I reversed into the street, locked the doors, and called 911. Someone broke in. I shouted. "I'm outside, in my car." The same 2 officers arrived 5 minutes later, guns drawn. They went in. I waited by my car, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. 10 minutes later they came back out. "All clear. You can come in." The place looked like it had been hit by a tornado. Not a robbery. Rage. The tree was toppled. Ornaments shattered. Couch cushions slashed. TV smashed. "Check if anything's missing," one officer said. I ran to my room. My MacBook Pro was gone. An envelope of emergency cash. Gone. He took my laptop and money. I said, "Looks like a regular break-in," the officer said. Scribbling. "Saw you leave. Took the chance." "No," I said. "It was him. The Craigslist guy." "We'll investigate," they said. But their tone said otherwise. But they were wrong. I had the cameras. While they checked for fingerprints, I sat on the ruined couch and opened the Wise app. One alert. Motion detected. Living room. 8:45 p.m. 45 minutes after I left. I hit play. The night vision feed loaded. Blurry but clear enough. The front door smashed inward. A figure stepped into frame. Him. The seller. Not Gary. Wearing the same dirty sweater. A ski mask pushed up over his forehead. Gloves. In his right hand, a metal baseball bat. He didn't glance at the TV. Didn't look for money. He walked to the center of the room, stood perfectly still, listening. Then he screamed. Not a word. A raw, angry scream. Primal. He started swinging. Lamps. Coffee table. Walls. Then he stopped. He began to search, not for valuables. He stabbed the bat into the couch cushions, like he was checking to see if someone was hiding there. He moved down the hallway, into my bedroom. I switched to the back camera, which caught part of the hallway. He went in. I couldn't see inside, but I could hear him smashing my bed. A minute later, he returned, breathing hard, confused, frustrated. He came back to the living room, stood in front of the bookshelf camera. He didn't spot the lens, but his eyes stared right through it. "Where are you?" he whispered. The microphone caught it perfectly. He paced for 10 more minutes. Just waited. He had been waiting for me. When he saw the neighbor's lights turn on, he finally left. Took the laptop and cash on the way out, almost as an afterthought. To make it look like a robbery, I showed the police the video. Everything changed. They saw the bat, heard the whisper. This wasn't theft. This was a predator who stepped into a trap I wasn't home for. They identified him fast. His name wasn't Gary. It was Lars Donovan. History of assault, stalking, breaking and entering. He had been out of prison for 6 months. They issued a warrant. Went to the house in Cedar Grove. Empty. He didn't own it. It had been foreclosed and abandoned for 2 years. He broke in, changed the locks, and squatted there. Used it as bait for Craigslist listings. In the basement they found a little workshop. Dozens of items, tagged and priced. And in the corner, a heavy metal chair. Zip ties attached to the arms and legs. That's why he wanted me to go downstairs. If I had stepped into that basement on December 23rd to make sure it fit, I don't think I ever would have walked back out. They searched for Lars Donovan for months. They found his car abandoned in a ravine 2 towns over. But they never found him. I moved out the next day. Transferred to a different school across 3 states. I couldn't sleep in that town again. I still keep the video on my phone. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I rewatch it. I see him standing in my living room, gripping that bat, whispering, "Where are you?" I know he is still out there. And every Christmas, when I see someone shopping for secondhand bargains online, I want to scream at them, "Keep your money. Buy it from a store, because you never know who's waiting for you in the basement." I've been working in private security for about 4 years now. Most people think it's a dramatic job full of chasing thieves and tackling shoplifters. Truth is, it's 99% boredom and 1% deeply unsettling, especially if you work the graveyard shift at a dying mall. This happened last year, the night of December 23rd, bleeding into Christmas Eve morning. I was the only guard on duty. The mall I worked at, name withheld for legal reasons, was the kind that used to be busy in the 90s, now slowly collapsing under the weight of online shopping. The owners were cheap. The year before, they had slashed our security budget in half. That meant I was on shift alone. And worse, they had canceled the cloud storage for our camera system. The cameras still worked. I could monitor them live from the security office. But there were no recordings. If I didn't see something as it happened, it may as well have never happened. It was 1:55 a.m. The mall had been locked up since 10. The janitorial crew had finished and left. That left me, a mostly useless radio, and 2 million square feet of abandoned retail space. I was sitting in the guard office, tucked behind a long hallway near the food court. I was trying to stay awake with cold coffee, staring at the wall of camera feeds. Malls at night are eerie in a way you don't expect. During the day, they're full of light and life. At night, the lights are dimmed to save power. Mannequins in display windows throw long shadows that look exactly like still people. The ventilation system moans through the vents like someone whispering across the walls. I was doing my usual loop through the cameras, tapping from one feed to the next. Camera 1, north entrance. Nothing. Camera 2, food court. Nothing. Camera 3, loading dock. Nothing. Then I switched to camera 4. The Central Plaza. Because it was the holiday season, the Central Plaza had been turned into a Santa's village. You know the setup. Faux snow. A little wooden cottage. Giant plastic candy canes. Mechanical elves painting fake toys. In the middle of it all was a giant red velvet throne where mall Santa sat during the day. At night, everything was powered off. The elves slumped forward in their joints, stuck in mid-motion. On the black and white feed, they looked like corpses, frozen mid-task. I was about to click to the next camera when I froze. There was someone sitting on Santa's chair. My heart kicked. I leaned in. The resolution on our cameras was bad, but not that bad. Someone was there, hunched forward, sitting on the big red throne, wearing dark clothes, a hoodie, maybe, and loose pants, not moving. Just sitting dead still in the middle of the darkened display, facing straight ahead. My first thought was a prank. Sometimes kids would hide in the bathrooms before closing to film TikToks at night. I grabbed my flashlight and the heavy-duty can of pepper spray. I wasn't scared yet, just annoyed. I didn't want to file an incident report right before Christmas. "Security to base," I said into the radio, out of habit. No one else was listening. "Suspected trespasser at Santa display. Investigating." I left the office and stepped into the main hall. Silence hit me like a wall. If you've never been inside an empty mall at 2 in the morning, you don't realize how loud your own footsteps are. Each one echoed against tile and glass. I passed the dark windows of a closed Gap, the shuttered pretzel stand. The air was cold. They cut the heat at night. I could see my breath. As I neared the plaza, I unclipped the pepper spray from my belt. We weren't allowed to carry firearms. That always made me nervous. I turned the corner near the escalators. "Hey," I shouted, shining my light toward the display. "Mall security. You're trespassing." My voice echoed back at me. I aimed the flashlight at the red throne. Empty. I stopped. A cold spike slid down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. I had seen someone, clear as day on the feed. 10 seconds ago. I stepped slowly into the fake snow. The elves looked worse up close. Their painted eyes seemed to follow me. One had its arm stuck halfway raised, like it was about to strike something. I walked up to the throne. "Is someone there?" I called. Silence. Just the hum of a vending machine in the distance. I reached out and touched the velvet seat. It was warm, not hot, but noticeably warmer than the cold plastic armrests. Someone had been sitting there seconds before. "Come out," I shouted, spinning with my flashlight. "I know you're here. The cops are already on their way." That was a lie. I hadn't called them. I began to search. Behind the fake cottage. Nothing. Behind the oversized wrapped presents. Nothing. Then I noticed something near the back of the display, where the fake snow met the real tile floor. Wet footprints. They weren't deep, just faint, dirty smudges across the white tiles. They led away from the throne, through the elves, and down the hallway toward the south maintenance corridor. I followed. My flashlight grip had turned my knuckles white. The prints faded after 20 feet, but the direction was clear. They led to a staff door. I pushed it open. The back corridors of the mall were all bare concrete and flickering lights. Ugly. Industrial. "Anyone back here?" I called out. I walked the length of the hall, toward the south loading bay. The metal exit door stood ajar, propped open with a brick. Cold wind blew through the gap. A few dry leaves swirled inside on the floor. I exhaled, a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He was gone. I kicked the brick away and slammed the door shut. I double-checked the bolt. Then I pulled out my phone and called Greg, the mall manager. He picked up on the fourth ring, groggy. "Yeah, what's going on?" "This is Michael. We had a break-in. I saw someone on camera, sitting on the Santa chair. By the time I got there, he was gone." The south loading dock door was open. "Anything damaged?" Greg asked. "Any stores hit? Not that I saw. Probably just a homeless guy looking for somewhere warm." "Okay." Greg said, "Log it in the report. Don't call the police unless there's damage. I don't want corporate freaking out over some Christmas vagrant. Do a sweep. Make sure he didn't let anyone else in." "Will do. Merry Christmas." "Greg." "Yeah." He hung up. I did what he asked. I swept the mall from top to bottom. Every bathroom. Every changing room. Every corridor. Nothing. I went back to the guard office and sat down. I stared at the camera feeds for the rest of the shift. Every time I looked at camera 4, my stomach twisted, but the chair stayed empty. My shift ended at 7. Dave, the morning guy, came in and I told him what happened. Probably old Joe again. Dave chuckled. "Every winter he sneaks in at least once. I'll keep an eye out." I went home, exhausted. Told myself I overreacted. Just some guy trying to sleep. Nothing more. I slept a few hours. then got ready to head to my parents' house for Christmas dinner. But first I had to stop by the mall. Greg had left our paychecks in the guard office. When I pulled into the lot at 3 in the afternoon, my stomach dropped. Police cars were everywhere. At least 4 cruisers, an ambulance, lights flashing against the mall windows. I parked and ran to the front doors. Yellow tape stretched across the entrance. Dave was outside talking to the police. His face was white as paper. "Dave," I shouted, ducking under the tape. "What happened?" He turned to me, wide-eyed. "Michael, you need to talk to them." A detective in a long coat stepped forward. "You, the night shift guy." "Yes? What happened? Did he come back?" "Come with me." He led me inside. The mall was shut down. Curious shoppers pressed against the glass outside. We walked toward the plaza. "You reported an intruder around 2 a.m., the detective said. Said he fled out the south dock." "That's right. I saw him on the chair, then gone." Door was open. We reached the Santa display. Evidence markers were everywhere. Forensics teams taking photos near the fake cottage. And beside the throne, a black body bag. "We found him 2 hours ago," the detective said. A janitor saw a boot sticking out from under the throne platform. "He was stuffed under it," he added. I felt dizzy, but leaned closer. "He was wedged deep under there," the detective said, then unzipped the bag a few inches. I saw a face I recognized. A homeless man I'd seen panhandling near the freeway exit. He looked peaceful, except for the dried blood matted in his beard. "Stabbed," the detective said grimly. "Multiple times. Hunting knife found in the trash near the pretzel stand." I tried to piece it together. He broke in. I startled him. He ran. But he was dead. The detective looked me in the eye. "Forensics is here. Based on temperature and lividity, this man died before midnight. Possibly earlier." I stopped breathing. "Before midnight," I stammered. "That can't be. I saw him. I saw him on the chair at 2 a.m., sitting upright." The detective frowned. "You sure? Could have been clothes. A shadow." "No," I said. "A person, sitting right there." Then it hit me. If that man had been dead and hidden under the throne since before midnight, then whoever I saw sitting on the chair at 2, that was not him. That was the killer. The killer had sat on Santa's chair, in the dark, above the body he had just left there. He sat there, facing the camera, facing me. "Camera," the detective snapped. "We need that footage. If we get a clear face, we can get him." I felt sick. "There's nothing," I said, voice cracking. "It's live only. No recording. The mall cut storage costs. No footage. No server. Nothing." The detective cursed and kicked the floor. But the worst part was not the body. Not even the fact that a killer might walk free because of budget cuts. It was the timing. I saw him on the throne. I went down. Took maybe 3 minutes. When I got there, the chair was empty. Still warm. The door was open. I thought he fled, but the police said there were no other footprints by the dock. Just mine. And the snow outside was undisturbed. The killer never left when I went to investigate. He opened the door just to make me think he had. While I stood at the Santa Village, flashlight out, calling for him, he was still there. Maybe hiding behind the mechanical elves. Maybe crouched in the dark food court, watching me touch the warm seat, watching me lock the doors, watching me patrol. He spent the entire night in that mall with me. They never caught him. No DNA. No prints. No footage. Just one dead man. And one security guard who cannot get through Christmas night without looking over his shoulder. I quit the next day. Now I work a toll booth. The pay is worse. But at least I see every face that comes and goes. They say Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. They talk about lights and family, and I just keep quiet. People like to say Christmas is the safest, warmest time of the year. They talk about lights in the windows, family dinners, and the comfort of knowing you are home. I used to believe that. After what happened last year, I do not think I will ever look at a Christmas tree or a quiet snowy night the same way again. This happened on December 24th, Christmas Eve. My husband, Daniel, works as an emergency room nurse. Accidents do not take holidays, so he was scheduled for the overnight shift. He left the house a little after 9 that night, kissing me on the forehead and promising to bring leftovers from the hospital cafeteria. I was not thrilled about being alone on Christmas Eve, but we had already exchanged gifts earlier that morning. Our golden retriever, Cooper, was curled up on the living room rug, already half asleep. We live in a large house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, tucked at the end of a cul-de-sac with a strip of woods behind it. Privacy is wonderful until you are alone, when every shadow feels closer than it should. After Daniel left, I locked the front door. Deadbolt, handle lock, chain. I checked the sliding glass door in the back. Then I did what I always do. I checked the windows again, armed the security system, poured myself a soda, and settled onto the couch to watch a movie. Cooper sighed and rested his head on his paws. The first 2 hours passed without incident. The wind rattled the gutters outside. Nothing unusual for winter. At exactly 11:14 p.m., my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Doorbell camera alert. Motion detected at the front door. My stomach tightened. We were not expecting anyone. It was too late for deliveries and far too late for neighbors dropping off cookies. I paused the movie. The house felt suddenly heavy and quiet. I picked up my phone and opened the app. The loading circle spun for a few seconds that felt much longer. When the image finally appeared, my heart dropped. Someone was standing on my front porch. They were dressed like a Christmas caroler. A long red coat in an old-fashioned style. A tall hat. A thick scarf wrapped around their face, leaving only their eyes visible. They were not singing. They were not moving. They were simply standing there, staring directly into the camera. My first thought was that it had to be a prank. Teenagers, maybe. I waited for them to ring the bell or burst out laughing and run away. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. They did not move. The night vision made their eyes look hollow and black. I decided to shut it down immediately. I pressed the talk button on the app. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed instead of scared. "It is after 11. Please leave." There was a slight audio delay. I heard my own voice echo faintly from the porch speaker. The person did not react. They did not tilt their head or shift their feet. They just kept staring. It felt wrong, like they were not looking at the camera, but through it, like they were looking directly at me. Sitting on my couch, "I am serious," I said, my voice beginning to shake. "I will call the police." Nothing. I closed the app and dialed the local non-emergency police number. I felt foolish calling 911 just because someone was standing on my porch. But every instinct in my body was screaming that something was off. While the phone rang, the house fell into a suffocating silence. Then I heard it. Not from the front of the house. From the kitchen behind me. I froze. Cooper lifted his head, ears sharp. The sound came again. A soft tapping, like fingernails or rings clicking against glass. I did not go to the kitchen. I did not want them to see me. I reopened the security app and switched to the backyard camera. I almost dropped my phone. There were 3 more people. They wore dark coats like the one at the front, but their faces were uncovered. Instead, they wore masks. Cheap plastic masks like the kind sold at discount stores. Clear plastic molded into smiling faces with bright pink cheeks. In night vision, they looked warped and inhuman. 2 of them stood back in the snow. The third, a tall, broad-shouldered man, stood right up against the sliding glass door. I watched as he slowly, deliberately, pressed down on the handle. He was testing the lock. Thank God I had checked it. The handle did not budge. The masked man leaned closer, pressing his plastic forehead against the glass. He was not staring blindly inside. He was searching. I hung up the non-emergency call and dialed 911. 911. What is your emergency? There are people trying to break into my house, I whispered, sliding off the couch and crawling behind the kitchen island so I could not be seen from the back door. There is one person at the front door and 3 in the back. They are wearing masks. Okay, the operator said calmly. We have your location. Officers are on the way. Are you in a safe place? I am hiding. The doors are locked, but they are trying them. As I spoke, I heard a voice. Not through the phone. From the backyard, it was muffled by the double pane glass, but clear enough. Emily. My blood went cold. They knew my name. This was not a random break-in. Random burglars do not call you by name. Cooper stood up and growled low in his chest, every hair along his spine raised. The man's voice came again, calm and steady. Open the door. Emily, we know you are home. You were not at the company party. The company party. I felt sick. I worked at a mid-sized logistics firm. We had our Christmas party 2 nights earlier. A normal office event. Nothing memorable. Nothing dangerous. They know me. I sobbed into the phone. They mentioned my work party. Please tell me the police are close. They are 3 minutes out, the operator said. Stay on the line with me. A loud crash exploded through the house. I screamed. On the camera feed, I saw the man at the back door stagger. He had kicked the glass. The reinforced door held, but the frame shook violently. They are kicking the door. I cried. Go to a room with a lock. The operator ordered. Now, I grabbed Cooper by the collar and tried to pull him, but he refused to move. He stood between me and the back door, teeth bared, barking with a fury I had never heard before. Not a warning bark, a promise. Another kick. Wood splintered. The lock was giving. I could not make it upstairs. The only room on the first floor with a lock was a small half-bathroom off the hallway. I ran inside and slammed the door, locking the flimsy knob. Cooper, come here, I screamed. He did not. Then the glass shattered, the loudest sound I have ever heard. The sliding door collapsed inward, glass exploding across the kitchen tile. Cold air rushed into the house. I could feel it even through the bathroom door. Emily. The voice was inside now. Where are you hiding? Emily. I pressed myself against the far wall of the tiny bathroom, covering my mouth to keep from crying out. The operator was still speaking in my ear, telling me officers were at the entrance to the street, but it felt impossibly far away. Then I heard a growl turn into a roar. Cooper. The heavy sound of his body charging. A sudden scream followed, no longer calm, but sharp with pain. Get the dog off me. Shoot it. Shoot the dog. Someone yelled. My heart stopped. If they had guns, it was over. Then sirens. Not distant. Right outside the house. Red and blue lights flashed through the bathroom window. Police. Drop your weapons. A voice boomed from outside. Inside the house, chaos shifted. The intruders did not advance further. They panicked. I heard boots crunch over broken glass. Running toward the backyard. Backyard. An officer shouted. They are heading into the woods. I stayed locked in that bathroom for another 5 minutes, shaking so badly I could not stand, until a female officer knocked gently. Emily. This is Officer Grant. The house is secure. You can come out now. When I opened the door, the first thing I saw was Cooper. He was limping slightly, a small cut on his nose, but his tail wagged. I collapsed to the floor and wrapped my arms around him, burying my face in his fur. He had bought me time. The living room was destroyed. Snow blew in through the shattered back door, mixing with broken glass. There was blood on the carpet. Not mine. Not Cooper's. Police caught 2 of the intruders in the woods behind the house. The other 2 fled to a car parked a block away. but the arrested men gave up their names immediately. The man who spoke to me, the one who kicked in the door, was the one Cooper bit. They found him near the tree line, bleeding heavily from a deep wound in his leg. When they removed his mask, I did not recognize him at first. But later, when a detective showed me his photo at the station, it clicked. His name was Kevin. He worked in the IT department at my company. We had never spoken. Not once. But I remembered him. He was always in the break room when I got coffee. Never said hello. Never smiled. Just stood there stirring his drink, watching me over the rim of his cup. I always thought he was just awkward. During the investigation, police found a shrine in his apartment, printed photos from my social media, pictures he had taken of me walking to my car in the parking lot. He had convinced 3 friends that I was a wealthy executive who kept large amounts of cash at home. That was how he got them to help. Money was never the point. He told police he just wanted to have Christmas dinner with me. We moved out of that house 3 months later. I could not sleep there anymore.